Welcome to Litbit channel. Today we will see Martin Luther King by Coretta S. King. Let's we see summary of this prose. Discuss how the Christian present faith and the Gandhian techniques followed by Martin Luther King lead to the desegregation of Montgomery City bus lines. In introduction part, the prose piece Martin Luther King Jr. is an extract from the My Life with Martin Luther King Jr. by his wife Coretta S. King. The prose piece presents the segregation the black community experienced in the American society. It also shows the emergence of MIA, Montgomery Improvement Association, and the leadership of Martin Luther King as its president. Segregation of the black and white people. The local of the prose is Montgomery, Alabama, and the year is 1955. All over America, the blacks were discriminated by the white. Everywhere segregation was followed, that is, the blacks and whites were separated. They had different parks, schools, public place, etc. Montgomery government in bus service. The prose talks about the segregation followed by the Montgomery government in bus service. It is mentioned that segregation followed in the bus was the worst. Most of the black, that is about 70% of them, used the bus service. Even then, they are treated worse than cattle. The first seats of the bus were reserved for the whites, and the blacks should not occupy those seats even if the seats were free. On the other hand, if the white seats were full and some whites boarded the bus, the blacks had to give their seats for the whites. They had to seat from the last, that is, from backwards. Worst of this was they were ill treated by the drivers. The driver of those buses humiliated the blacks in front of their children by calling them as black cow, black ape. The passengers paid the fare first and then got on the bus. Sometimes the driver played a cheap joke, that is, after collecting tickets fare. They started the bus by leaving the passengers. The poor people, after paying the money, underwent this trouble. Most elderly people and pregnant women faced such discrimination. For many years, the black accepted such ill treatment without reacting to it. But an incident that took place on December 1st, 1955, changed the history of blacks in America, especially in Montgomery. Mrs. Rosa Parks incident. Mrs. Rosa Parks, a 42 years old black woman who was returning home after tiring work on December 1, 1955. As she was feeling tired, she boarded a bus and sat in a seat at the beginning of the black people row. More whites got into the bus, and the driver ordered her to get up to give seats for the whites. Due to her tiredness, she refused to get up, and it was considered as an unlawful incident. Due to it, she was arrested and produced in the court. Later, she was fined $10 and her lawyer filed for an appeal. This was the first case filed against a black for disobeying the law. Black people saw decided to boycott the bus service. The news of Miss Rosa Parks' arrest had spread around the city. Every black thought that they had suffered a lot under white discrimination and that was the time to end segregation. All the white ministers and civil leaders had a meeting regarding this issue at Martin Luther King's church. In the meeting, they have decided to boycott the bus service on 5th December 1955. Leaflets were circulated to convey about the boycott to the black people. On December 5th, Martin Luther was very anxious to know the response for the boycott from his own people. He, along with his wife and friend Ralph Abernethy, traveled around the city to check the response of the people for the boycott. Almost all the buses were empty except a few whites and one or two blacks. The blacks, by boycotting the bus service, travelled by various modes. Most of the men and women were walking to their work and students were going by walk, and many were gathered together and traveled by taxi. Some were riding mules and horse. An old lady said that her heart felt tired due to discrimination, but now through her legs are paining, she feels happy. Martin Luther King's speech. On the same day, Martin Luther King was elected as the president of Montgomery Improvement Association. That night, Martin was to make a main speech. That evening, Martin, with his friends Ralph Abernethy, went to the meeting. He was overwhelming with the black people's response for the meeting. The church where the meetings was organized was crowded and the entire road was blocked with a traffic jam. More than 5,000 people gathered for the meeting, and as there was no space for Martin to enter, he was lifted and passed to the stage by the crowd. This shows the people's trust upon Martin. He addressed the people that they were tired of being discrimination. The segregations had to be stopped somehow. He requested them to continue with the boycott and not to force others to take part in it. They should act by following the Christian faith. Demands of black people. The blacks had three demands to withdraw the boycott. There were the bus operators should treat the passenger with respect. Reservation of seats should be removed. Who comes first can occupy a seat. Negro route bus should be operated by the Negro bus driver. Regarding the demands, Ms. Martin met the mayor of Montgomery, the city commissioner, and the bus company officer, but no decision was taken in the meeting. The blacks were strong with their demands and they continued to boycott the bus for several months. To maintain unity among the blacks, mass meetings were arranged weekly twice, and the orator motivated the public. Martin was in the particular that they should follow the Gandhian techniques of non-violence. This silent way of protest against segregation has spread around the city. Quality of Martin leadership. Martin leadership quality was seen by his way of thinking and action. Once he said that the protest was not only for the black people's sake, but it was for the white people too, because the white people are suffering with superiority complex and thought the protest they can free the whites as well as from this. Due to the intensity of boycott, Martin started receiving threat calls. He was arrested on false charge on 13th January 1956 when Martin was addressing the public in the church. His house was bombed. The white police were nervous by thinking the reaction of blacks, but Martin said that his family was safe. Violence should not be met with non-violence. The quoted Jesu words and following Gandhian principles, this incident showed Martin was a potential leader. A great Christian presence for the blacks. Later in the month of Feb 1956, when Martin went out of the town with his wife, a case was filed against Martin and 90 other leaders of his movement. His lawyer appealed in the federal court and the court dismissed the law case segregation as unlawful on 6th May 1956. The whites filed appeal for in the USA Supreme Court. For many months the boycott was continuing. The people had a tough life during the bad weather. On November 13, when Martin was in a court for the judgment, the court announced the judgment of the Supreme Court that segregation as an unlawful act. The court ordered that stated segregation as an unlawful act reached them on 20th December 1956. It was considered as a great Christmas present for the black. The next morning, a group of members gathered at Martin House. They all traveled in the first desegregation bus, and the whole day Martin traveled in different buses to check the right of the blacks. The desegregation in Montgomery was achieved without losing a single life.
இந்த வீடியோ உங்களுக்கு பிடிச்சிருந்தா மறக்காம லைக் பண்ணுங்கள், ஷேர் பண்ணுங்கள், கமெண்ட் பண்ணுங்கள், சப்ஸ்கிரைப் பண்ணி கூட இருக்க பெல் ஐக்கனையும் ப்ரெஸ் பண்ணுங்கள். தேங்க்யூ ஃபார் வாட்சிங்.